Hi, everybody. I am Andra Annette, and I want to welcome you to this week's session of Soul's Code. I saw my volume was very low, and even though I'm loud, we want you to be able to hear me. So today I have a very special guest with me, Sue Vows. And Sue Vows is a master's life coach, and she's also a master's mental health coach and an Amazon's best-selling author. She's also the founder of the what is it called?
A Dare to Believe movement.
The Dare to Believe movement. So I saw something else too, but we'll get into that. So she's had quite a lot of different experiences in her life, and I know the impact of past life experiences full on and what it can really do to you and how it hinders you in your future. But she took something that was very tragic and she turned it into something very beautiful. So please help me welcome special guest Susan Bass. Sue Bass.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. It's actually bowls like a cereal bowl.
Oh, okay. I like that. I'm sorry. Sue Bolt.
No problem. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that.
I love it. And I love your message and I love your story. I love that you took something very traumatic and turned it into something beautiful. So can we dive into it a little bit so
Let's
people really
dive.
all right, because I know people they'll understand it, so I don't want to be very surface because it is very compelling. So you had a trauma, sexual abuse as early as 7, and that really did traumatize you and kind of stymie your development. These are years that we go through love and nurturing, and how people treat us and how they respond to us does form the primary core of how we develop. The loving belonging is a basic need. And when that's violated, it's very hard to get past that and to trust again. So what was that like for you?
Wow. Well, and let me share a little bit with folks, if I may, a little more of the details so they can understand the context of everything. When I was 7 years old in first grade, a classmate of mine enticed me into the woods and proceeded to rape me. And he held me against my will for 45 minutes. And there was a lot that happened after that. But the most significant thing that happened was that I shut down and I didn't tell anyone for 15 years until my senior year of college. So, yes, as Andra said, there's a lot that happens in that because I didn't have a chance to be a normal kid. Suddenly, the carefree life of a 7-year-old was gone. And instead, I went into survival mode. And for me, that meant shutting down. I didn't I didn't know what I was feeling. And it's important to say early on that, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I can finally say this, but it's important to say that nobody did anything wrong that day except my perpetrator. It is only his fault. It is only his responsibility, and I am not to blame, and I do not have responsibility in that. Now, I said it took a long time to figure that out because I was applying what I know as an adult to a 7-year-old mindset. So looking back as I was working my healing journey these last 10 years, I had to really go back and really let myself off my own hook. And we can get to that. I don't want to jump too far ahead in terms of the early development years. In addition to not having a chance to be a kid, I didn't know how to communicate for myself. I didn't know how to speak up for myself. So I didn't know what to say. I knew something had happened, but I didn't know how to put it because this is early 70s. Rape was not on the culture. It wasn't on the radar. Nobody knew to ask anything. I didn't know to say anything because I didn't know what had happened. My perpetrator, when my mom came looking for me, because I was 45 minutes late coming home from school, my mom came looking for me. My mom rescued me. And my perpetrator went out the other side of the woods. And his last words were, "Don't tell anybody." And I did not know the prison those words were putting me in. So because I didn't know how to deal with the emotions, I shut down. And I grew up in as I got older, realized was a dysfunctional home. Later turned alcoholic when I was in my high school and college years. And with that, I just, I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know. I basically started wearing a mask that Sue didn't have a problem. Sue is your go-to gal. Sue had it all under control.
Mm.
And while on inside, I was dying. By the time I get to middle school and high school, I'm experiencing some different rejections. In high school, my best friend from sixth grade was moving away out of state when I was 16 years old, and her other friends had a going away party for her. And I wasn't invited because they didn't like my personality. And that was absolutely crushing. And from that, I didn't let myself cry a tear for 2 years. Even as a 16-year-old, that's crushing. I didn't know around this time as well, I was starting to develop an eating disorder. I developed an eating disorder in high school and it continued into college. And I've only been in recovery from my eating disorder since 2006. So even just 8 years, no, 18. No, I'm losing all kinds of track.
Okay, take your time.
2016. Yeah, it's 2016. I knew there was a six in there. 2016 is when I went into recovery from my eating disorder. So I've only been in recovery 8 years. This is all over 4 decades after the event has happened. 4 and 5 decades now, actually. So that one event just set me on a whole different pathway. It's scientifically proven that trauma literally rewires your brain and what they call your neural pathways of how you interpret and how you process different things. So I started off track right away. So by the time I get to the time when I'm finally in my 40s and 50s, when I'm finally dealing with it, I'm really far off. And then you add in the eating disorder. My brain wasn't processing things correctly at that point in time in addition to the trauma because I wasn't giving it the proper nutrients that it needed. So everything became a threat to me. Everything was uh, all became about me keeping up my facade, wearing my mask, and living a lie is what it ended up being.
I wore that mask for a really long time. You just told
Mhm.
a lot of my story.
Mm,
There's no accidents in life.
no.
I know that you spoke of forgiveness in a way because you
Mhm.
had to let go of that pain. And I want to share something with you because I carried around a lot of the pain that you just spoke of for a long time. And I took it out on myself
Mhm.
because we do feel that we had some responsibility in that. I don't know why we feel that way, but we do.
Mhm.
And I asked a friend of mine who had been through so much more than I had gone through with family, different things, but just as painful.
Mhm.
And I said to her, how do you do it? How are you so
Mhm.
forgiving of all these things that people have done to you? And she very matter of fact looked at me and said, Andra, I didn't forgive them for them. I did it for me. As
Mhm.
long as I hold on to it, I'm the one that's still being hurt with it. And it was like this, wow, like this explosion
Mhm.
went off in my head. And I started writing these lists of people I needed to forgive over the
Wow.
course of my life.
Mhm.
And there's I don't know if she's a minister, Mary Morrissey, but she had this whole forgiveness prayer where you forgive them and you forgive your part in it and then you let it go. And for like
Mhm.
2 years straight, that's all I did was forgive. And I wrote it down and I
Mm.
journaled it all the time. And I can't tell you the weight that was lifted off
Mhm.
my shoulders. But that, like you said, is an adult mind because I didn't have that capacity as a child.
Mhm.
I wanted to die so many times and people would tell me, you're beautiful, you have so much going for you.
Yeah.
And when you don't internalize that or feel that way,
Mhm.
nothing anybody says to you really matters because it really is what you say to yourself that makes the difference in
Yeah.
that.
Very much so. And I experienced that as well. My negative self-talk was all I heard. Frederick Buechner, in his book Telling Secrets, has a phrase in there where says that what separates us most from God is the endless chatter of human thoughts, the things we tell ourselves. When I was in high school, I wanted to end my life. I was convinced that nobody cared. There was a situation at a nursing home when we went to visit my mom's aunt, my great aunt, and again, my mind wasn't thinking right, and I was so hurting and I needed to be seen. I had not been seen. I didn't feel like I mattered. And I was reaching out and acting out, doing anything I could to be seen. I look back now and I see this whole process and pattern of overactivity, because when I was involved in marching band and drama and chorus and basketball, I was seen. So therefore I had value in my mind. But junior year of high school, I wanted to end my life. When my parents were divorcing after 34 years of marriage, I wanted to end my life. Twice I have considered ending my life. I have dabbled in cutting, which at that point in time, I this is how warped out it was. I told my counselor I was just making marks on my arm. I was in such denial. I wasn't even calling it what it was. But yes, the power of forgiveness is so, as you said, weighty. It is hard work, and it is heavy work. It's heavy work because we have been carrying the load and we're trying to get it off of our shoulders. And as we forgive, each load, each layer gets a little lighter. It took me quite a while till I could get to that point. And I'm blessed to have a fantastic counselor. I started seeing her in 2008 after a dear friend passed away. 3 years after she passed away, I was still grieving as if it was yesterday. My eating disorder behaviors were coming back up. So I knew something had to happen. And I talked to my pastor who got me in touch with this person. And I've been with her since. And I looked at her about 2 or 3 sessions and I said, "What do you think it is, Amanda? Why is my eating disorder kicking in now? Why all this now?" And she said, "I think it's just a bunch of unresolved issues." And she was dead on, and we got to work. But that was 2008. We spent the first 6 years getting me stronger in the present. We've both said we had to get me stronger in the present before we could go back to the past. I didn't know what a boundary was. I didn't know how to speak up for myself. I was letting myself be manipulated, and I had to figure that out. I had to figure out how to advocate for myself, because remember what I said, I didn't know how to do that when I was 7 years old. And because I didn't tell anybody, there was no one else to do it for me either. So I had to figure it all out on my own. While I'm fighting all these negative self-talk about I don't matter and I'm such a screw up and it was my fault and no one's gonna, how could everyone ever love me, and all these things.
Mm.
So I was digging a hole that I needed help to get out of it. And I'm thankful that I have Amanda. We started dealing with the rape in 2014, literally 4 decades or more after it happened, because the event happened in, would have been around 71. And here we are, 2014, and I'm first dealing with it.
So how do you, it's like an onion. It really is. And you have to peel back those layers because everything after that moment changed.
Hmm.
Everything.
Yep.
The way you process this, everything, every touch, every glare, every word
Hmm.
that we've internalized, how we show up. And you said something really powerful about needing to feel validation and to be seen,
Hmm.
right? Because we were keeping this in the past so it wasn't seen because we
Right.
felt like we couldn't be seen, right?
Right.
So, and then that plays into your world. But you spoke of having friends and close friends, and that's a big step because it's not easy to trust after some of that. So
Mm-mm.
parts of you were trying to heal and be stronger for yourself, and some were still stuck where they were.
Right.
Because even though it's 4 decades later, I could still hear the pain in your voice. And
Hmm.
some of that pain never, we get past things just like death. We get past them, but they never really go away. They do impact us. There's always a small piece of that playing back because all our brain really is a camera that keeps recording and
Right.
recording.
Right.
And those negative things that happen to us are what the subconscious plays on. When we get in those
Hmm.
situations, that's when the fight, flight, or freeze comes up,
Hmm.
you know, because we remember that similarity.
Right.
And um I think it's a wonderful expression of self-love that you did go for help and that you're working through that, because
Mhm.
not everybody will do that, that you chose to rise above it, and not only to rise above it, but help other people and share
Yeah.
your story, because a big part of it is people don't share. So
Right.
I started doing these podcasts because I think that people really do heal through stories, through
Mhm.
sharing it, by letting other people know, because so many of us think that it only happens to us, and we feel violated and we feel dirty and we feel all kinds of feelings that we think nobody could possibly love us, nobody could understand how we feel in this moment. And it does happen to other people, and they're
Mhm.
feeling exactly like we felt.
Right.
And by sharing that, we give them the courage to maybe speak up, to maybe share it, or to go for that help,
Mhm.
or know that it's not their fault. And even though it kills us with every ounce of our being to forgive, we're not doing it for them, we're doing it
Right.
for us.
One of the things, and I've said this often, and I pray sometimes she hears it. If I ever have a chance to tell Simone Biles personally how much her story affected me when she shared her story, that would be an honor and a privilege and very humbling. Because when Simone, I'm getting emotional.
It's okay,
I,
you're vital.
yeah, I will not say forgive me for that. I will say please understand. And I've learned how to speak into that when it happens. It does, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Because when Simone Biles shared her story, it gave me permission to share mine. I then wrote a blog post about it. When I've written a book, came out in 2019, and I've got it here. I'll show you later. But before I wrote that book, most of my family did not know my story. So, and in some ways, when I wrote that book and I put it in the acknowledgments, in some ways I was writing part of my family's story as well, with some of the things I shared about just the home environment when we were growing up. Um, but the power of sharing story is freeing. It's also petrifying.
Mm,
And if you had, I cannot overemphasize, I am only 10 years into my healing journey. While the events happened in the 70s, and I started seeing Amanda in 2008, it wasn't until 2014 that I started dealing with the rape. I'm only 10 years into this. And if you had told me then I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have laughed you off the face of the earth, because I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I had anything to offer, and I was a total waste of space. I called myself the holy exception. I'm a Christ follower. And even with that, being a follower does not mean I have it all figured out. It does not mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I'm exempt from anything. I'm a Christ follower, and I felt that I didn't matter. I called myself the holy exception, and I believed it's a lie, but I believed at that point in time, and here's the generalities, that everything in the Bible was good enough for everyone else but me, because I was too screwed up, too far gone, and a total waste of space. I was imploding, and I was probably on my way to trying to hurt myself again, because this is the years that my counselor and I were starting to deal with the rape. And I have an eating disorder. At this point in time, I was not in recovery from my eating disorder yet. Emotions are the enemies of eating disorders. They are
mm,
diabolically opposed. Eating disorders are not about food. They are about unresolved trauma and unresolved emotions.
yes.
So we're dealing with a very core event in my life that has totally train wrecked my life up to this point in time. My eating disorder is coming up, and I don't know how to deal with that because I'm having to feel. And I don't like my feelings because I was still in denial about my whole story. And what ended up happening, what set me on this path, my brother was serving 18 months in prison for a drunk driving accident for which he took responsibility. And he was released. And when he got home, that in August 2014, when he got home, he ran into somebody in town. And he said, "Man, I haven't seen you for a while. Where you been?" He said, "In prison." And in my mind, I'm thinking if anyone has reason to have secrecy and shame around your story, my judgment, it'd be someone who's been in prison. It's not something usually you sit there and just say off the cuff. And when my brother told me this, I was very convicted. And I was like, if he can be authentic, I want that. And I looked at my counselor and said, I just want to be authentic. Because earlier in the year, a movie came out called Ragamuffin, and it's based on the life of the late Christian musician Rich Mullins. And the first 20 minutes were a really hard watch for me because I connected so strongly to them. And at this point in time, nobody knew what was going on. So I'm watching it with my mom and some friends and wiping a lot of tears. And it's like, just got something in my eye, mom, that kind of thing. Because I didn't want to be found out. That had been a theme throughout my entire life. I didn't want to be found out because if I was found out, I was afraid I was going to be rejected. And I couldn't handle that again. So I watched this movie a number of times. And later in the spring and summer, the family and friends of Rich who were involved in the movie and the movie producer started saying, do we want to do, what if we do a retreat around the themes of this movie? And one of those themes was about forgiveness, about relationships. And it was about parental relationships. And it was about trauma and the masks that we wear. And all of this was connecting because we were starting to deal with the rape this year. So the movie coincided with everything. The emotions are going off the rail. Then my brother has this comment in passing with a friend, and I treasure the fact that my brother grew so much through his experience that he challenged me with one sentence. So I looked at Amanda and said, get me ready. I just want to be authentic. I had finally signed on to go to this retreat. We spent 6 weeks in our counseling sessions talking about my fear and my anxiety. Because yes, those relationships, I didn't have them. And here I was feeling like I was supposed to go to this event and having no idea why. One of the retreat is now called Walking Stick Retreats. We just had it 2 weeks ago. We have it again in September. And one of the cool things about the retreat is they open up a Facebook group just for the people going to the retreat. And in that first year, the only commonality we all had was we all had seen this movie, and it spoke to us and struck chords with us. And they daringly asked us to share our stories in this group with total strangers. Mind you, I had not shared my story at all with anybody except my dean of students, my senior year of college. He was the person I ended up telling, and a couple select others since. So one morning I'm sitting out in the dining room, pot of coffee, I'm typing away. And about half hour in, I've finally finished my story. And my legs are I'm literally just shaking like crazy because I had never shared this. And now I'm sharing it with 50 strangers. And I'd been lurking in the retreat room for about 2 or 3 days, commenting on other people's stories, encouraging them, but kind of hiding in the shadows. And it was like, it's my turn. And you know how the heart starts pounding? That's what
Yeah.
was happening. So I hit post, and literally the rest of the day, Andra, I was waiting for it. I was waiting for somebody to reject me in some way. And I was checking Facebook so many times, multiple times an hour. I was waiting for it. I knew it was going to happen. And they're not one comment. Instead, to get back to the point about the power of stories, other people said, you're so brave. I can't wait to meet you. You give me courage to share my story. You are so brave. I can't, I'm so encouraged by you. I had never heard any of this. We are now 10 years removed from this event. There has yet to be one negative statement about me sharing my story. So that retreat program has been a catalyst to my healing since then. This group has become my tribe. And through these retreat programs, God speaks to each person in language he knows they're going to understand. For me, it's the language of music, and it's the language of retreat. And he needs to get me away to get my attention so I can really hear him in a very focused way at times. Because I have so much clutter in my life, I don't want him drowned out. So we went to the retreat. The first year, when we're dealing with these themes of forgiveness and the masks we wear and living authentically, I had to own my story. And I was in denial about my story. I hated my story. I didn't really own the fact that I was raped. I might say it, but there was no emotional attachment to it. And I had a breakdown moment where I finally just had a chance to just own my story and to be broken, to let others, to express the brokenness I've been feeling inside for decades. The next year I went back And the theme was the disappointing Messiah. And I'm like, how is the Messiah disappointing? He's God. And instead, it was talking about how we feel Jesus is disappointing when he doesn't line up with our expectations. So I'm applying all this to my story and my healing journey. And the second year, I had to grieve my story. And that alone was another powerful, gut-wrenching process of
I
realizing the weight of it. Yeah.
I think sometimes that's why we don't accept it. We don't own it because it becomes too real. Somehow when we don't accept it and we don't grieve it, it doesn't touch us as much because
Right.
we get to keep it separate from who we are.
Hmm.
I know that sounds crazy, but
No,
it's
it makes sense. Owning your story is a critical step. It's one of the first key steps to daring to believe that you matter, which was the whole is the whole thing about the Dare to Believe movement. Real quick, the next,
tell
so the
me about
second,
the dare to believe. Tell me
yeah,
about this.
yeah. Let me, because I'm getting it. Let me share this real quick, finish with this part about the retreat, because that feeds into this.
Okay.
Because so the second year I had to grieve the story. The third year when I was there, I walked away with the nugget, I am valuable to God. And that is when things started changing. I mentioned the book I wrote. This is it. It's called This Much I Know, The Space Between. It's on Amazon and Kindle. And I started writing that story because I started realizing that my story had worth and that my story could help somebody else. What started this whole Dare to Believe movement, it's actually started then. And it has, but I didn't realize what was happening until the last couple of years. There is a statement my counselor made to me very early on. In those first few years when we're dealing with my stuff, my current, and she would challenge me on things, I looked at it, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, Amanda. And I would just shut down, very defensive. And she looked at me very calmly, but very directly, and simply said, what you're really saying, Sue, is you don't matter. And I hated it when she said that to me because it
We
was so truthful and I didn't want to hear it. I've
never
since
do.
Oh, no, but I've since realized that was a catalyst to this Dare to Believe movement. I am now a master certified life coach. I'm a master mental health coach, speaker, author, conference speaker, presenter, the whole deal and everything. And in speaking to people after conferences, that's the best part of being at a conference when you're speaking is the one-on-one afterwards. People come up
Hmm.
to the stage or your merch table. And between those conversations and in conversations with my coaching clients, I started hearing the undertone of doubt. You don't know my story. It's too late for me, but you don't know what's happened to me. There's no way this could happen for me now. I'm just settling. My phrase is, excuse me, I've disqualified myself because of my life experiences. I'm not good enough for that. It's good enough for somebody else but me. Same thing that I was experiencing in 2014. And through that, I have realized that there is one critical question that each person has to answer for themselves. And how they answer it is the pivot point in life. And that question is this: do I believe that I matter? Not does somebody else think I matter? Not does, Johnny says I'm good at this. What do I think about me? How I answer that question, how each of us answers that question. And until we can answer that question in an affirmative, positive, bedrock way, permanent life change cannot and will not happen. It
Correct.
is that big. So the Dare to
Correct.
Believe movement is all about this. It is getting the message out there, challenging people to struggle with that question. Well, I would love if somebody could say, yes, I believe I matter. Most of the
Well, I
people
can
that,
say that because yes, I believe
yeah,
I'm not.
yes,
Yes, I can.
but in our journey, when we're dealing with our stuff,
Yeah.
we're not sure about that because any trauma, any abuse, any rejection, anything like that has the undertone of you don't matter.
But even
I'm
even
making myself,
people,
yeah,
but even people that don't suffer through traumas still go through that. Like if they've
right.
had bad bad homes,
Hmm.
and their family members were detached. Maybe
Hmm.
their parents were detached and
Hmm.
weren't present. So those integral times where we're in that development, when we're supposed to be feeling love and belonging,
Hmm.
and we're not, we're dismissed. Not now, honey, I'm busy. Or
Right.
so it's not as strong or as prevalent when those traumas smack us and, smack us down, and we scramble to get back up. But even those situations have a major impact
Hmm.
on us in our growth.
Yeah.
The
They talk.
trauma just complicates it that much more, because
Well,
usually it's been my experience that most people that have had traumatic stories and come
hmm.
through trauma have also had problems in their families to begin with.
Right.
They
And
were already feeling like,
mhm,
devalued.
right. And they talk big T, little t trauma. Trauma is trauma.
Mm,
The scope of it certainly adds things to it, but I will never discount there's someone being emotionally neglected or physically neglected in a home environment because of dysfunction, because of manipulation, because of emotional abuse, whatever it is. I will never discount that as anything less than anything else, because it all affects a person. How something affects a person may be different, but
mm,
they are all significant contributors. So yes, no matter what has caused the internal processing to go off the rail, and it could be multiple contributing factors, it could be a lot of little things, whatever it is, there's still that thought, that doubt that I don't matter. No matter
mm,
how you have received that message, it might be you struggle in math, you've gotten D's, but someone has told you you just can't think straight,
mm,
you
mhm,
know? But again, how we process things all all affects things. So the Dare to Believe movement is challenging people to take that next step. My business is my step ahead. You only have
That's
to
what I
be
was
as
trying to
Yeah,
remember.
you only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. And that the whole premise is that we all have something to offer someone else right now.
Mhm,
We don't have to have it figured out. We don't have to be the expert. We don't necessarily even have to know what we're doing. But if we have experienced something that someone else is starting to experience, we have life experience, meaningful life experience, because all life experience is meaningful. We tend to try to classify it. All life experience is meaningful and can help someone else. So if I'm, say, example with my parents, mom passed away October 2020. 6 months after that, a coworker tragically lost her father to suicide, and she found the body, and it was Easter Sunday. The next day, someone else and myself went out to the house. There was concern expressed for me. So, you going to be okay? This is still pretty raw for you. I said, I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? So we pull up, and yes, there were a lot of tears. But over the course of that hour that we were there, the tears started to subside, and Veronica started asking questions. Well, we're going to the funeral home today. What do we do? What about the clothes? How do we pick out what he's going to wear? What about this? What about that? And I was able to help with those questions. I had only been through it 6 months prior, and I'm quite sure I was not well. I certainly didn't have it all figured out, but I could at least help her. And I later found out that those moments, she said, were so incredibly critical for her to help ease some of her anxiety. That is the power of My Step Ahead. So My Step Ahead has launched the Dare to Believe movement, because until we can answer, each of us, the question, do I believe that I matter? Like I said before, permanent life change cannot and will not happen. We'll find ourselves still running around. It might be a longer loop, but we're still running around the same loop.
mm,
So because people need support to get to that point, because we're all dealing with our stuff. Everybody has stuff. Our website has a lot of articles and worksheets that are free and downloadable, so that people, if they're not yet ready to take the step of reaching out to a life coach like myself or to a counselor, if they're not yet ready to take that step, they can start working through self-paced some of these articles and worksheets and kind of start getting a read on where am I with things. You know, where am I struggling? So we've got stuff up there right now about fear. We've got stuff up there about imposter syndrome. We're getting ready to load some stuff about boundaries, about self-talk. We're going to have so much more. Um, with
Great
that,
resources, by the way.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
resources. Every one of those topics. Great
yeah,
resource. A lot of people struggle with all of them.
right. So,
I
so
think
the
they're
whole,
intertwined. I think they're
they are.
very,
Very much so. So the Dare to Believe movement is about empowering people to share their stories while they are still healing. That's what it's about. It ties in right with the mission of My Step Ahead. It's all about story, like you said, and it's all about taking the dare. And that word dare is there very purposefully, because at the start you're thinking, I don't matter, so why would I want to do this? When someone dares you to believe something, when someone dares you, they are challenging you to do something outside of your comfort zone. And they're seeing something in you that you may not yet see for yourself. So the word dare is there very specifically. Now, if people go to my website, SueBowles.com, I have a free PDF that I want to send them. It's downloadable, and it's called Dare to Believe, Turning Yesterday's Setbacks into Tomorrow's Success. And we go into this more in more detail. It'll talk about the things we've been talking about: owning your story, grieving your story, and daring to believe. And I really want to get that in people's hands. So they can go to my website, SueBowles.com. Just all I need is your name and your email, and you'll get it in your email right away. It's a free downloadable. It's going to be right there for you. And then what I want to do as well, just to help some people with their stories as well, is anyone who takes us up on that offer, I'm also going to send them the first chapter of my book for free, just so they can kind of see what it's about and have a little more encouragement about their stories as well. But yeah, the Dare to Believe movement is it's gathering steam. It's already international, and
I
it
think
just
it's great
continues.
what you're doing too. So I'm very on board with reframing our thinking, you know. A book that was very instrumental with me was Shad Helmstetter's The Things That We Say When We Talk to Ourselves.
Yes.
So I well, I still own an Amway business. But I was a partner in Amway many, many years ago, and he was one of the speakers.
Mm,
And it was all about
plasticity.
neuroplasticity of
Yeah.
the brain and how to rewire yourself. And he tells this,
Neuropathways. Yeah.
yeah, and he tells his, and I loved it, you know, because I'm that science geek. And
Yep. Yeah.
he tells his how his wife loses weight because she's doing something in the bathroom while he's shaving and he's listening to the thing, and I just loved it. But he has a whole series of you know, for weight loss, for
Mhm.
career, for whatever you want. And I actually make those cassettes for my
Mm,
clients. You know, I
mhm.
reframe their thinking about depending on whatever they're struggling with, because I have multifaceted stuff that I do. So depending on whatever they're struggling with, that's what I try to rewire.
Yep.
So, and I had so much fun creating that.
Mhm.
But that really helped me when I was on that big weight
Yep.
loss journey. The I wrote them for myself. I have a lot of friends
Mhm.
that use them too, and they rewrite their own, and they
Yep.
work. It does
Yeah.
definitely work.
You were talking about the power of story earlier. Um, you mentioned that start that I'm an Amazon best-selling author. That just happened in January. I am part of an anthology called Breaking the Silence: Voices of Survivors. And
Wow.
it just came out on, yeah, it just came out on Amazon in January, and it went #1 bestseller on Amazon in 2 different categories, which is fantastic. The power of this is that there are 21 people in here sharing their stories, breaking their silence. Some people are sharing their story for the first time. And there's someone in there who is a 4-time, I think 3 or 4-time cancer survivor. There's someone else whose husband was murdered. There's domestic violence, there's sexual assault, there's someone who escaped a cult. There are so many powerful stories in that. And that again is the power of story, because this book is getting into the hands internationally and encouraging men and women, because there are men and women, male and female authors in that. I'm also excited. my chapter in this book, excuse me, shares my story and talks a little bit about the Dare to Believe movement. Volume 2 of this book is coming out this coming October 2024. And I'm also going to be co-author in that one as well. And I'm going to be talking about the Dare to Believe movement in much more detail, sharing much more about its origin,
Is
and
that
how it has all come about.
Dare to Believe? Isn't that being made into a docu series?
I'm not familiar with it.
Are you talking about the books? Is your publisher She Rises?
No, the publisher is Michelle Jewsbury Speaks.
Okay. Because it sounds like I've been in several anthologies myself, so
They're fun. They're fun.
yeah, yes, I'm a two-time international best-selling author, and
Nice.
so
Congratulations.
I definitely get
You understand. It's
yeah, so I
fun.
definitely get it. And we were anthologies, and
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be writing my own book this year. So
I've started my second book, but that kind of got set aside to work on these. Like
but I
my
love it.
chapters are
I love hearing the stories and being part of something bigger than yourself. But
right.
there's always that fear, like the first book, there's that fear, oh my God, did I just tell people this? But
Yeah.
I just felt so relieved because finally I was able to let it go and give it away, you know. But I didn't write about my trauma. I wrote about my disease processes
Mm-hmm.
and what that was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, living with that. So, I think it's great what you're doing. So tell the audience, we do have to
Sure.
close this out. So tell the audience, other than the website, so SueBowles.com, where they could reach you. You were talking with me earlier. You have a podcast. What is the name of the podcast?
I do not have my own podcast yet.
Okay.
It'll probably be coming at some point in time, but I've not been able to get that off the ground just yet.
But you are on YouTube.
I'm on YouTube. Yes, I have my own YouTube channel. Just look up Sue Bowles, and then also I think on my website it has all the links to there for all my socials on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the whole deal and everything. So really, the website's the best place to go. It's BOWLES, so SueBowles.com, and they'll find everything on there, all the links to all the other websites, and with the books and everything. I would love to get that PDF in their hands because I that is critical where they're not yet ready to take that step to reach out for help to myself as a life coach, to a counselor or someone. It's a chance to at least kind of start having that conversation with themselves.
Mm.
You were talking about the first book. It came out in 2019. It was cathartic. It was therapeutic for me. It also took a different scope. When I first started, I had this one idea, and then it kind of morphed into something else. And it was released in September of 2019. And I found out in 2020 it won second place nonfiction at the Faith and Fellowship Book Festival. So it was my
Wow.
first book, self-published, won a pretty significant award. So I was like, I must be onto something. And then for the anthology to go bestseller and on Amazon. So I really enjoy the writing. But what I enjoy even more than that, I love the speaking and I love the life coaching. I love meeting people on their individual level where we can talk about what it is that's holding them back. For it might be just a goal. I have a gentleman I was working with during the pandemic, social
Honey, we
anxiety.
do
Oh,
have
okay,
to
okay,
we do
all right,
have
no
to
problem,
end the
no
show.
problem, not a problem.
So I do apologize. I could
Oh,
talk
you're
to you
fine.
forever. I love talking to you. But we do have to end the show. So
Not a problem.
if they have any questions, they could reach out to you at
Yes.
SueBowles.com. It was
Yeah.
a
Yep.
pleasure meeting with you, and I want to thank you for
Thank you.
being so honest and authentic and sharing your story. And I want you to know we do see you and you
I
are
thank
valued.
thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
You too.
Thank you everyone for coming in, and please let's thank our guest Sue Bowles for being so honest and open and sharing this part of her life with us. Thank you guys. Have a great night.